What's going on, guys? Welcome to Victims and Villains. I could say long time no see. Before I started this review, I kind of just wanted to give you guys an update on where I've been and kind of why hasn't been a whole lot of activity on our channel. If you guys are new to what Victims and Villains is, this is a channel designed specifically to educate and engage individuals like yourselves on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. My name's Captain Nostalgia, and we're going to be talking about Firestarter, but let's talk about some quick updates real quick. So the last update we did on this channel in this video format was the unbearable weight of massive talent, which was almost 3 weeks ago. In that time, I and a couple of our other staff members have actually gotten sick, beaten it, still have a little bit of leftover juice in the pipe. We hosted our first ever film festival, Horrific Hope, at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester, Virginia. Thank you to all those that were in attendance, all the filmmakers that submitted this year, and the Alamo Drafthouse, of course, all of our volunteers, staff-wise, and also just want to say a huge thank you to all of our this year's sponsors, including Hard Talks and Hard Hats, Fierce Literature, You Have to Watch This Podcast, Ride the Omnibus Podcast, and Witter Entertainment. But let me just tell you, anyone that has ever planned a film festival and anyone that is planning to get to a film festival, what they don't tell you is how much of a mental toll it actually takes on you. The entire week after the film festival, I was just so mentally drained and exhausted, not just from being sick, but also at the same time just being in a place where I was like, I'm burnt, and I need, for my own mental health, I need to kind of take a break from creating content. And then once I had a proper rest, I had the joy of just creating. We have some awesome things planned for the rest of this month. Today, as I said, we're talking about Firestarter. We're going to be doing Men. We have the Animine season finale coming out later next week. We have an awesome story podcast from the TikToker Movies Are Therapy. We're going to be talking about Men in a spoiler-filled episode. Plus, we have Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan tomorrow, since it is Friday the 13th, and much, much more. We cannot wait to share some of these stuff with you guys and get back to creating content. Our submissions, next year's Horrific Hope, open up on June 6th. So if you or someone you know is a filmmaker, consider supporting us and submitting your film into next year's festivities. We are going to be back at the Alamo Drafthouse once again. We don't have a current date / weekend in mind and hammered out just yet, but it will be April 2023. That's all the updates I have for you guys. So thank you guys for bearing with us, and thank you guys for allowing us to take a break and breathe in between such an exhausting and rewarding experience like Horrific Hope Film Festival. But let's talk about Firestarter. So I'm going to preface this by starting this video and saying I have read Stephen King's Firestarter novel in preparation for this movie. I watched the original 1984 film for the very first time a few weeks ago, and a lot of my criticisms and viewpoints of this movie are going to be looking at this as an adaptation. And so if I appear to be unbiased in any way, shape, or form, I'm apologizing up front. But let's go ahead and jump into it. This is a updated version of the 1984 Stephen King classic of the same name that takes the McGee father and daughter, Andy and Charlie, on the run from a subcontractor government group that's essentially trying to capture them and study their telekinetic and pyrokinetic powers. Up front, I'm going to say this about the movie. I think this movie looks gorgeous. I love the way that it is specifically Right off the bat, I'm going to talk about how gorgeous this film looks. The cinematographer Karim Hassan does a marvelous job. This film just looks crisp, it looks beautiful, and it looks like it has these like warm emotional ties. With that said, also, I really enjoy the way that Keith Thompson, the film's director, sets up his shots and blocks them. Like, it's done in a very specific way that really puts the characters front and center, and it creates this intimacy between the film and the audience. And but before I start talking about the acting in this film and the pacing of this film, I talk about specifically how intimate the characters feel because of the cinematography and the direction. If you've ever read the book by King, you know that this is a very emotional story where it is essentially a father and daughter on the run, and then somewhere along the way it is about father and daughter trying to reconnect and rebuild their lives. It's a very emotional story, and somehow, some way, this film just absolutely feels like it has this disconnect of emotion. Like, I know that like studios after so long, like they have to essentially remake or do something with the property in order to continue maintaining the rights. And while this is no like Hellraiser Revelation type of scenario, this movie just feels soulless. It feels like it lacks the basic emotional core to really make you care about these characters. And the pacing itself feels so incredibly uneven, where there are certain points where there are genuine moments between father and daughter, and there are moments that just feel like just incredibly fast paced, that like it just kind of seems like they googled spark notes on what the story beats of this Stephen King book were, and then just went off the spark notes rather than actually investing time to read the book. And if you're expecting a faithful adaptation, this is not the movie for you. Not by a long shot. This movie takes so many creative liberties with King's stories, it actually makes me very agitated as a King fan. Like, the entire third act of this movie, like, just feels like a one large middle finger to Stephen King. And again, I understand that this is an adaptation. I'm always the first guy interjecting into the conversation, talking about how this is an adaptation and it's going to differ from its source material. I get that. Again, as a Stephen King fan, and someone that really genuinely loved the source material, this breaks my heart in a bajillion different ways. I understand 100% that you're not going to be able to take a 400-page book and bring all of those characteristics into a hour and a half movie. I understand that 100%. But what I don't understand is just blatantly changing different things about the characters as a core. Since this is a non-spoiler review, I'm just going to say that this movie takes creative liberties that make quite literally no sense. And then there are one or two things that I will say definitely modernize it, and it feels natural. But then there are other portions of this that I can't get behind. I just don't understand why the directors and why the writers thought some of these decisions were a good idea. But despite its flaws, it still has really solid performances from its father and daughter in Zac Efron and Kiera Armstrong. Perhaps one of the things that I really enjoy most about their dynamic is how natural it feels. Like, it's still kind of weird for me, like, as someone that grew up on Zac Efron, like, seeing him play a father figure, but he absolutely just kind of just flows right into it, and it's just jarring to see how good he is at this. I think when you're talking about the original 1984 film, a lot of people couldn't probably tell you a whole lot about the story beats, but they remember Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore, like, made that movie really iconic in a lot of ways. And so you have, like, already big shoes to fill, and Armstrong fills them with ease. Like, her performance in this is just one of the best things this movie has to offer. There's a sequence in the film's third act where she's in the woods and she's kind of training herself on how to harness this power. And it's not a whole lot to say, but she does really well with that sequence in particular. I thought it was really well done. And also a lot of the emotional beats, she hits extraordinarily well. And I'm also going to say this too, like, I never thought I would say this, but normally, typically movies that are like kind of subpar the way this one is, you don't walk away thinking, man, that was a really good score. John Carpenter, Coney Carpenter, and Daniel Davies did not have to go as hard on this soundtrack and this score as they did. This score is incredible. It is impeccable. It is honestly some of the best work that Carpenter has done on any film score outside of Halloween in decades. It's got this like 80 synth vibe to it, but also at the same way, like, it feels like a John Carpenter movie, while also at the same time somehow being able to really ease into the emotional and action-packed elements of this movie. All right, well, that's kind of my thoughts on this. Let's run this through our Rorschach rating scale. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a 2 out of 5. I think this movie does a lot of really good things with its acting, its cinematography, its direction, its score, but its pacing and its narrative and just the creative liberties it takes from the book, just it's jarring, it's forgetful, it's forgettable, sorry, but at the same time, like, it's almost an embarrassment to the legacy of Stephen King. It doesn't ignite anything. Sorry. Alright, well, brings us to this week's mental health moment. If you guys are new to our content, mental health moment is where we examine a theme of mental health from the movie of which we were reviewing in hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. For this one, there is a scene in particular where Zac Efron and his wife essentially are talking about keeping things bottled up and how it's not healthy. And that's a stark reminder that when it comes to mental health, like, if we're struggling, speak up, say something, pull someone aside in confidence and let them know, hey, like, I'm not doing so well. Because honestly, the longer that you shove it down and you meditate on it and you allow it to keep bubbling up, the harsher it is. So consider our resources in the show notes below. Open up, speak up. And I know it's easier said than done, but honestly, at the end of the day, it's going to be better for your mental health. It's going to be better for those around you as well. Thank you guys for watching and doing life with me, and for the updates, the Firestarter review, and happy Friday the 13th. Check us out on our episode tomorrow talking about Jason Takes Manhattan Friday Part 8. I'll be back next week, and hopefully down the line I would like to pick up my Cursed Films series. So we'll see. Have a good night, guys.